You know, I honestly think that RPGs are some of the best gaming investments that you can make. There just aren't a lot of games that let you explore a world with the amount of depth that they offer. The best ones give you the freedom to tackle the situations in any way you see fit, and have enough to its systems to make you want to explore for hours without getting stale, always mixing up what the player can expect as they progress through their adventure. And with how long the journey can last, they're always the best bang for your buck. Would you rather spend $60 on a game that you can play through in 8 hours, or one that'll keep you occupied for 80? Especially during one of the worst public health crises in recent memory, RPGs sort of became my junk food through quarantine. I had plenty of games in my backlog that I've meant to catch up on, and there were plenty of new releases this year too that kept me occupied. Just warning you, there will be light spoilers for every game I'm talking about, but I'll try not to get too specific since these are games I want you guys to experience. So, let's take a look at some of the worlds I got lost in the year that we were forced to stay inside. I was really excited for more content since I fell in love with Kingdom Hearts 3, and for $30, it made me think that this was going to be a pretty hefty amount of stuff to keep me occupied. What I didn't want this game to be was just Kingdom Hearts 3 Final Mix in the form of a DLC. Trailers made it seem like it was going to be an extra story, which it was, but that story was so shallow and reused so many assets and moments from the base game that yeah, it was kind of Final Mix in all but name. The whole story is pretty much just replaying the climax for some extra cutscenes, but instead of just adding the cutscenes to the main game, they tie together this thinly veiled story meant to more tease you about the future of the series than give context to the events that are occurring or even act as a good epilogue for Kingdom Hearts 3. Much like past Final Mixes, we get Super Boss rematches against the organization, and we get a new Super Boss meant to tease what we can expect for the sequel. They trick you into thinking that what's going on is important by tying together a campaign, but at the end of the day, really nothing happens. I love Kingdom Hearts to death, but the challenges aren't why I keep going back. So once I hit the super bosses, I was just kinda done with it. Ultimately, what this means is I spent $30 on replaying the climax of the game. It is paced a lot like the main game as well. You get some interesting new story toward the beginning, then you go through the motions until you hit the ending and the new stuff pops back up. And nothing interesting or cool is actually revealed until that ending, with everything new in the maze of the Keyblade Graveyard just fixing plot holes. Like I didn't need to see Demyx show up to take the replica for Naminé, that is just something I can assume happened. The ability to play as other characters was an awesome little addition, but also something that I feel like should have been included in the main game, especially since they were just for one battle anyway. It was a cathartic romp around the best part of the main game, but nothing really other than that. If this were $10 to $15, I honestly feel like I would have gotten my money's worth. But for $30, I just feel ripped off. But it was really nice to get an RPG experience, even if it was just a taste of it. At this point, it really had been a while since I sank my teeth into a meaty RPG like that. I usually have been playing shooters or platformers, so I was never really staying in one world for too long. Remind was the perfect taste of that kind of exciting adventure, and I knew I wanted more. So I found my 3DS, chose an RPG I've had in my backlog, and dropped into the 3D world of sleep. What were you expecting? I was really late to the 3DS party. I didn't get one until like 2015, so I missed out on a lot of what made the console great early on. One series in particular I was sad I was missing was the Mario and Luigi series. If you want an RPG that innovates with every iteration, you need to play these games. Despite using the same base gameplay for every title, they all do something different to mix up the formula, usually mixing the gameplay with whatever defining feature the current hardware has. So in the case of Mario and Luigi Dream Team, it's the 3D. Now I know a lot of people hated the 3D, but when Nintendo throws a gimmick at me, I fall for it hard almost every time. When I finally got into the 3DS, developers and Nintendo themselves looked at the 3D feature as a nuisance, usually not implementing the defining feature of the console. So when I booted up Dream Team so many years later, it was kind of exciting to have this adventure so willing to take advantage of what was supposed to make this console great. I have always loved the visual aesthetic of the Alpha Dream RPGs, and the added depth that they put into the game was delightful. Hot take of the century, the 3D on the 3DS is one of the coolest additions to handheld gaming. Y'all are just bitches. I'm honestly only sort of kidding. I have the new 3DS, so it tracks my eyes to make sure I always have the best experience possible. Holding an original 3DS in the perfect spot every time is annoying as hell. And if I play in the dark, yeah, the 3D sometimes just glitches out and strains my eyes. But anyway, other than a really awesome presentation, Dream Team doesn't really do much to stand out from the other games in the series. Like, don't get me wrong, it's still a lot of fun, but it just feels like they were strapped for ideas with this one compared to how wacky some of the past entries were. My favorite thing about the Mario & Luigi series was their speed. They were the perfect mobile RPGs with quick battle systems and really fun overworlds. But the thing that Dream Team loses with the transition to the 3DS was that defining speed. Unskippable boring tutorials have always been a norm in the series, and it is why the openings are the worst part of all of these games. But everything in Dream Team was just slow. Nothing in this game is just straightforward exploration. You have to jump between the dream world and the real world so much with a small cutscene that plays every time you do something. Every time you do something to affect the dream world, it makes you wait to see what happens to Luigi before affecting the dream world itself. All of your special attacks take like 30 seconds to pull off. It might all seem small, but all the time you spend waiting really does add up. One of the main collectibles of the game are the pillow folks you find, and the transition between real world and dream world is roughly 20 seconds as Luigi falls asleep, Mario jumps in, the game loads, Mario jumps out, and Dreamy Luigi appears and the brothers greet each other. You get another cutscene of you rescuing that person and the pillow reacting on the touchscreen, another loading screen, and then Mario jumping down and Luigi waking up. At the time of my review, I haven't finished Mario & Luigi Dream Team, but I'm far enough in it to feel that my review is justified. So that's the final number of collectibles I ended up collecting throughout the game, which means this is how long I've spent actually just waiting in my total game time. And it's almost always just the same transition. And that doesn't include the animations for all the time you need to mess with Luigi in the dream world to mess with the environment. Take that as you will, it's just a nitpick from a fan of the series. The battle system that we have is still the same fun and basic battle system that we've had since the original game. But in the dream world, it gets switched up. Now Mario is the only one you control, and the goal becomes using your attacks to clear as much of the screen as possible as quickly as you can, with moves that attack groups of enemies rather than just one. Even if I'll stand by that this is, I think, the worst of the Mario & Luigi series, that just means it's still a really, really good game. The humor is super wacky and the writing is top-notch. After everything we've been dealing with Paper Mario, it's really nice seeing original characters and species just showing up and having a good time. The Beanish, the Block People, the Pillow People, it gives this series a sense of personality while still making it uniquely Mario. The entire game is about going into Luigi's dreams, while in the dream world you mess with a sleeping Luigi to progress through. You even go into the depths of Luigi's psyche, and I have to say, I wasn't expecting this. Going into Luigi's id, seeing how much he deeply cares for Mario and his well-being, it gives so much character development and personality to a character that only speaks with And as someone who's a longtime fan of the franchise who got his start on the GBA, seeing classic characters returning out of nowhere was a welcome delight. We may have had Fawful return as the villain of Bowser's Inside Story, but I was grinning the toothiest grin the instant Popple showed up. I really can't explain it, like this game bores me sometimes, but I still just love it. It isn't the best Mario & Luigi game, but it's a lot of fun. It was a satisfying adventure to play on the go while I was starting to play other things. And when I finally woke up from my time with Mario & Luigi, I started an adventure in another universe I was excited to explore. As you could probably tell, I am in love with Dragon Ball Z, and a full RPG being able to explore it as characters I love is pretty much the perfect mix. I mean, after all, this is my third time in pretty much a year talking about this game. The exploration and the battle systems are fun, and they are the reason why I kept playing the game all the way through. And the story was also really well done up until the Saiyan Saga. But as I continued through the game, I started noticing the rushed nature of the presentation. It would go from alright to downright terrible, and the large world starts feeling a lot smaller smaller when you realize how repetitive the side quests become. Even the combat started to feel boring since your characters grow independently of you, keeping them as strong as the story needs them to be. Despite having a large party, the main campaign limits who you can have for roughly 90% of the game. I already made a video for this game a while ago, so if you want to see my more in-depth thoughts, then just click over there and watch the video yourself. When I started writing this video, I fully intended this section to be more on the DLC of the game, but holy shit was that a hot mess. I haven't purchased the Season Pass for this game yet because I didn't feel there was enough to justify me purchasing it. As of recording this video, there's the Super Saiyan God transformation with a fight against Beerus, and the Super Saiyan Blues transformation with the fight against Frieza. I heard that there was also some extra modes added, like a card game that's sort of their take on Gwent, and a Muso mode. I think I'm pronouncing that right? Moose. Dynasty Warriors. The Dynasty Warriors-esque game mode does pique my interest a bit, since I think that is something that the main game was missing, but I just don't feel it's enough to justify a full purchase of the DLC just yet. They've been saying that there's going to be a full story pack coming out later, and I'll probably end up purchasing the DLC once that actual story mode comes out, because that's why I liked Dragon Ball Z Kakarot to begin with. But as of right now, yeah, I'm not gonna buy the Season Pass for pretty much the Kakarot version of Remind. Some of the new moves you get have some new mechanics with the beam attacks, and when I watched these battles online, it was cool seeing the new mechanics actually incorporated into the boss fight. Especially since my issue with all the bosses in the main game were how samey all the encounters were. Having a battle actually take advantage of your skill as the player rather than a big number attached to you is a welcome change of pace that you can't just get in the base game. But yeah, I don't think that this was necessarily their intention with the DLC just being this bare right now. I think that there were a lot of complications with the coronavirus in production, so that's why I'm not just trashing the game outright. Especially since Bandai has done amazing jobs with DLC in the other Dragon Ball games like FighterZ and Xenoverse, I think that this is just more of a product of the times. If the content is worth talking about when it comes out, I will make a follow-up video for it, but with the way the base game is, I wouldn't hold my breath. So, after fighting for the future of the universe, I decided to go back in time and fight for the past. Assassin's Creed Origins is a bit of a stain on my gaming record. I bought the game at launch, but I just never got around to playing it. Not that it was a bad game at all, I just kept getting distracted with other things, and the idea of this massive open world adventure seemed a bit daunting. I eventually stopped playing it altogether, only to pick it up when Odyssey got announced. Then I got a little further and just stopped again. This would continue up until about mid-February of 2020 when I just said fuck it, and then marathoned the whole game. It was a lot. Honestly, it wasn't even the drive to finish this game, really. I more really wanted to play Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and my OCD would not let me touch Odyssey until I fully completed Origins. I literally had Odyssey in the plastic wrap from when I bought it up until I started playing it. But anyway. So wanting to become that Greek hero, I finished my adventure as the ancient Egyptian cop as quickly as I could. I don't know why it took me 3 years, but I finally found my love for Assassin's Creed Origins. The story and the writing are what did it for me. This game has so many quests with NPCs and areas that are filled with so much detail that I forgot which parts were the main story and what mission I accidentally stumbled onto. For the first time in Assassin's Creed history, combat felt like an actual challenge. Almost every game in the franchise has a system or a mechanic that you can cheese that makes combat a joke, so a game with a Dark Souls-y take on combat but with Assassin's Creed speed was a great choice. I honestly couldn't tell you why I kept ignoring this game so much. Part of me thinks it was because just how open the world was. I mainly played Assassin's Creed for the ongoing narrative and the story, so having a game so focused on the open world aspects was kind of daunting to me. For a while, I just didn't have the time to sink into an aimless open world. The worst Assassin's Creed games don't do anything interesting in the middle sections of the game, and I think that's where I kept putting it down. But things change, and this gigantic open world with nothing really to do is exactly the thing I wanted to explore. This time picking it up was also when the story finally got interesting to me, making me want to see the thing finished. This was a fun enough journey, and seeing the credits roll after 3 years was a really cathartic feeling. But it still felt like something was missing. And so, I dived even deeper into the past to find it.
Warning. Data stream unstable. Attempting to restore synchronization.
I love the world of ancient Greece and the mythical setting that goes along with it. Everything that made me put down Origins suddenly felt like exactly what I wanted in Odyssey. The openness of the world, the setting, the characters. It led to an experience I literally never wanted to end. I spent 70 hours on the main game just fucking around before I finally finished the story and put it down. And that's the thing, I wasn't done with it. I easily could have kept going. This was one of the few games I could actually get into the role-playing aspect. I was inside the mind of Cassandra. I created my own backstory for her growing up that let me get more into the game. I loved going through the Greek world, becoming a legendary mercenary, helping people around certain areas. I would change my costume based on where I was and what I was doing. I would listen to every bit of banter for each of these characters because despite the game having a somewhat lacking presentation for dialogue scenes, I just liked seeing them interact. The fact that the dialogue trees were so shallow and had no real bearing on gameplay really helped me get into it. I changed the way I approached dialogue choices based on my own growth and character development in the game. And I loved the feeling of growth the game had, even something that Assassin's Creed Origins was missing. You start as this person with nothing special, slowly realizing your destiny and becoming the Assassin's Creed version of a demigod. It was fan service for longtime Assassin's Creed fans and just a fun journey to take. It's the thing I love most about RPGs, that sense of growth you have looking at who you were at the beginning of the game versus the ending. Since finishing the story and creating the massive Assassin's Creed video, I went to play some of the DLC. But jumping back into a game like this after so many hours away took some getting used to. Even though I bought the season pass, I only really played Legacy of the First Blade. After the events of the main game, you meet the Persian assassin that killed Xerxes, running away from the Order of the Ancients, an organization with similar roots as the Cult of Cosmos from the main game. But rather than wanting to use your bloodline to control the world, they want you dead. Each one of the DLC stories has 3 episodes to it, but I only managed to finish the first episode of the first pack because, like I said, I played this game for way too long. When you play the same game for so long, it's easy to get kinda bored with it, no matter how much fun you have. I told myself I was going to stream the DLC episodes, but when I started getting back into streaming, it's also when I started taking my hiatus, so I probably will jump back into it for stream sessions if it's something you guys want. But that's for another time, because after finishing my Greek fantasy, I wanted to jump into another fantasy. Final Fantasy VII was the first game in the series I had played. I don't care what you think it looks like now, back then, this was a blockbuster. There was so much story with characters so three-dimensional, you could honestly forget that you were playing a game that looks like glorified papercraft. I got to the very end of the game and used the save crystal right before the final boss, and after losing once, a glitch occurred that made it so that I couldn't leave the screen it was used in. So my save file was soft lock and I had no way of challenging the final boss again. It's a devastating moment when you're 8. The game left such an impression on me, but that glitch left such a bad taste in my mouth that I never went back to re-experience it again. I just knew that it wouldn't live up to my rose-tinted version of whatever I built up in my head. But playing Final Fantasy VII Remake was like being transported to being 8 again. It was what I remember the game being like all these years ago. Say what you will about the man, any game Tetsuya Nomura directs has a combat system that I am completely in love with. Yeah, maybe not that. The game plays a lot like Final Fantasy XIII, being a mostly linear experience focusing on its story and characters, with moments of exploration in given areas and during certain chapters. The gameplay feels like an explosive mix between the fast-paced style of Kingdom Hearts with the more traditional battle system of a Final Fantasy game. It's a very easy to pick up, hard to master kind of system, and that's the kind of thing I love playing. I loved that every character felt different in battle and how the game rewards you for varying your playstyle. I enjoyed the constant switching and micromanaging of my party, taking full advantage of their unique abilities to overwhelm the enemy. The remake takes what was roughly 7 hours from the original game and turns it into an adventure as long as the whole game. The story stays mostly the same as it did before, but with adventures with side characters and their backstories taking up most of the runtime. Biggs, Wedge, and Jessie are characters that pretty much nobody remembers from Final Fantasy VII because they did so little. But now they're up there in importance with the main cast, with Jessie becoming one of my new favorite characters. I would die for you. I'm honestly okay with all the stuff they added into the main game to really flesh out these side characters more. This was an excellent way of making Midgar feel bigger than the original game by focusing on the characters within it. It made the world feel more alive and added a lot of development to our main cast. Cloud in the original game was a cold loner until you got out of Midgar, realizing through their time fighting together that he actually cares about this bunch of losers. In the original game, it was more of an excuse to learn about the characters in our party by having them bond with each other, but in Remake, it becomes his arc through the whole game, and since this guy isn't the one getting the development, you can actually take it seriously. The extra scene sort of enhanced that by giving our characters more of an excuse to be together longer. But the thing I got peeved at was Sephiroth and his army of ghost whisperers. I think Square backed themselves into a corner in deciding to only remake Midgar, since Sephiroth has nothing to do with it until the very end. Midgar had its own story that is mostly separate from the rest of the game's narrative. It was mostly meant to create a base for our characters so we can see how they grow throughout the adventure. The only glimpse we had of him were in the Sephiroth clones that we see throughout the main game, which you had to go and discover for yourself for the most part. So to give Sephiroth more to do, they start making the hallucinations that Cloud has throughout the game more prevalent, and making the clones' ties to Sephiroth a bit more obvious. I liked the idea of Sephiroth messing with Cloud the entire time, because it is something that will pay off later in the series, but I think the idea of the Whispers are taking it too far. The Whispers are another hooded figure to attach to Sephiroth, much like the clones are. Plot-wise, they're there to pretty much make sure that the story in the remake stays on track from what we know in the original. And honestly, it's the most Tetsuya Nomura thing. I spent $30 replaying the climax of his game last year. Fucking, he has me by the balls. Anytime something new happens in the game, these guys show up to give the characters we love another hardship to make sure that they get to the point they're supposed to be at in the original game. But the problem is, at the end of the game, it never really pays off. They sort of just become this weird reason to have a full-on Final Fantasy endgame boss fight in what is pretty much just chapter 1 of this story. The thing that made Final Fantasy VII such a fun journey was how you got from this random soldier with a ragtag team of tree huggers fighting to save the planet from an evil corporation at the beginning of the game, to the end of it where you're quite literally fighting to save the planet against a godly alien power framed around an anime as hell grudge match. And that ending is the thing people love the most. Not that I could ever experience it. So the whole thing with the Whispers and the admittedly epic as hell boss fight kind of felt forced. With flashes to random moments in the future titles, it felt like next time on Final Fantasy VII rather than the logical conclusion to this story. But despite that, I do like what it represents. The ending changes a major plot point that breaks everything fans of the compilation of Final Fantasy VII have taken for granted, and since it follows one of my favorite characters in the franchise, I'm excited to see where they take the future installments of this story. But I do hope that this new direction doesn't take over the series as we go forward, because I still do want to play a remake of this story rather than a brand new one. I have fallen in love with this iteration of Aerith. She's a much better character than she was in the original game, and oh my god, I want to see her dead, I want to cry. I'm literally putting this in your hands, Nomura. Let me feel something again. After beating the game, I felt like giving the original Final Fantasy VII another chance. I reinstalled it, but after playing it for a few hours, I just couldn't stand going through the same set pieces that I had just played over again. But I did know I wanted to try my hand at a turn-based RPG. So rather than playing as a mercenary again, I decided to try on a different persona. Truth be told, I bought Persona 5 Royal on a whim. After finishing Remake, I just didn't really know what to play, but I know I still wanted to play a rather lengthy RPG I could sink my teeth into. My friend recommended I try Persona 5, and I figured, why not? It's only $20 on PSN. But Persona 5 Royal came out a few days before I had to make my decision, so I figured, fuck it, I'll buy an expanded remake of a game I've never played. Why not? Before this point, I had never played a Persona game in full, and the closest I ever really got was this. Oh my god! So I really didn't know what to expect other than teenagers and suicide, and I got both. I've always been terrified of jumping into games with time limits since I much prefer playing games at my own pace, and the thought of losing my file because I made a bad decision 20 hours ago has always kept me away from stuff like this. But when I actually started playing the game, I realized that I was exaggerating all of it in my own head. Persona 5 Royal is probably one of the best turn-based RPGs I have ever played. The game that kept popping into my head the most during this game was actually Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, believe it or not. My biggest complaint with that game was the fact that nothing you did in the open world actually mattered, so there was no reason to want to explore it or engage with any of the activities. But everything you do in Persona makes you grow in some way. Your abilities in battle are directly tied to your friendships with other characters, and in order to get closer to your friends, you need to improve aspects of your social skills by doing activities. So part of the grind is maximizing your time to make sure your friends think you're charming, smart, kind, proficient, and gutsy enough to want to hang out with you more. Something I enjoyed from Assassin's Creed Odyssey was the ability to let you roleplay. The dialogue choices were shallow, so you could make your character react to whatever is happening with little impact to the story. It was just something to make the experience more tailored to you. But Persona 5 Royal really makes you think through your interactions with characters. When interacting with confidants to get new abilities, you need to pay attention to the story. Despite being a silent protagonist, Joker is his own fleshed out character, with his own morals and ideals. Hanging out with teammates and friends will level up your friendships and grant new abilities. While you're out, you have to respond to the conversation just like in Odyssey. In Odyssey though, you are quite literally the embodiment of order and chaos, and nothing you say matters in the end for the quest. Even the linear adventure of Final Fantasy VII had a crude dating sim aspect to choices, with decisions there for roleplay aspects to get the player more immersed, all of them inconsequential to the main story.
Sorry, little too in your face? I'll just have to change it up then.
Persona 5 takes the basic JRPG dialogue system and makes it a quiz to see how much you're actually paying attention to its story. It's important to know the characters' personalities in order to level up your bonds faster. If you're a shitty friend and don't know how you should respond in the situation, it will take longer for you to get that next cutscene in their story that gets you a level up and possibly a new ability. And doing things efficiently is super important since the whole game is on a timer. There are a set number of days in the story, and you play them all one by one. Joker can only do 2 things every day, and every character has a set schedule, so you need to prioritize your friendships and activities to decide what ability you want to prepare for your next dungeon visit. And the dungeons, they're smooth as shit. If you couldn't tell, this is just the Persona 5 Royal video now. Every dungeon, known as palaces, are reflections of the character's distorted desires. It's a distorted version of reality shaped by how the palace owner views the world around them, with all of them based on the 7 deadly sins. As much as I do love this game though, I will fully admit that the 7 deadly sins aspect is something fully lost on the characters and the art design. One of the bosses is a Yakuza member who's taking advantage of high schoolers to scam them out of a bunch of money. His palace is a giant floating bank, and after being defeated, he just wants to be with his money. But this is the palace for gluttony? A prosecutor views the courthouse as a casino that she rigs, having money stacked everywhere and forcing you to rig the games of chance in order to advance. But despite the visuals and the character's personal story, this isn't the palace for greed. It's the palace of envy. The sin doesn't always make sense, but everything else is excellent. Each palace is so wildly different, so you want to keep going further in the story to see exactly what the next crazy theme will be. I haven't played the base version of Persona 5, so I can't tell you what this remake adds that the base game doesn't, minus the content that was specifically made for Royal, because those kind of stick out like a sore thumb. When you aren't trying to decide who Best Girl is, you're playing a really solid turn-based RPG with elements of a stealth game. And I will fully admit, I was overwhelmed with the amount of game systems, the weird names of attacks, the number of characters, and all the enemies, and everything I was supposed to do. But the game does an excellent job easing you into every aspect of all of its systems, much better than almost everything I've played. Something I hate in long games is when they're drip-feeding you new mechanics until close to the end game, which just leaves the game feeling like it never took off the training wheels. But in an RPG like this, a 10-hour tutorial doesn't feel long at all. I will admit that battles still took a little while for me to do effectively. Each enemy has strengths and weaknesses to different elemental attacks, so if hit by something they're weak to, they'll get knocked down. If all the enemies in battle are knocked down, you can hold them up at gunpoint and decide what you want to do with them. So the goal of battles becomes downing all of your enemies as quickly and cost effectively as possible, since there's no way of recovering your magic outside of whatever item you happen to have on you. If the shadow is a lower level than you can negotiate to add it to your mask and use it in battle. Just like when you're hanging out with friends, you have to say the right things when negotiating with the shadows in order to get them to join your side. Failing the speech check could make them run away or have the battle resume. And after running through this pattern a few times, that's when it hit me. Persona is just really good Pokemon. All of my favorite aspects of Pokemon are just handled so much better in Persona 5. Pokemon does put a lot of focus into the multiplayer experience, so it needs to have a very strict balance for every Pokemon. And on top of that, there are hundreds of random calculations occurring that determine how strong they are. Two Pikachus at the same level with the same moves will still fundamentally be different behind the scenes, even if it isn't entirely obvious. So when playing, you either have to put the time in to grind the perfect Pokemon, or just accept that you won't have the best version of that Pokemon, with how invested you are in the multiplayer pretty much dictating how much you'll get out of the game's deeper systems. In Persona 5, every copy of the same shadow has the same stats and moves, so battles are less based around a rock paper scissors competitive mechanic and more using your arsenal to make sure enemies don't even have the chance to touch you. You can hold multiple types of shadows as personas just like you can in Pokemon, but unlike Pokemon, you aren't really encouraged to stick with a single team. Rather, you're encouraged to keep fusing personas together to get even stronger personas. So my usual MO was clearing out as many slots through fusion before starting to explore, collect all the personas I find interesting, then fusing them all together to see what I can make. Personas that are fused get more experience based on your friendships with characters and in turn gain more abilities. Fused personas inherit abilities of its bases, so the fun is constantly switching your playstyle while also breeding to keep powerful traits. Like I said, Pokemon. Almost every palace also introduces a new party member, each one with their own weaknesses and strengths, so almost every time I went dungeon crawling, there was something new to experiment with. And that is the base of what makes Persona 5 interesting no matter how long you play it. You are constantly being given upgrades and new abilities that allow you to experiment more with your party and mechanics. And when you find that perfect setup, the one that will let you dominate the defenses of a palace quickly by exploiting the weaknesses of all the shadows that just spawn there, it's just so satisfying. This game just straight up feels like you're playing a long-running anime, right down to how stupid and crazy the true antagonist is. The entire game is so perfectly paced that after 110 hours, I had no complaints. I felt accomplished. But then it kept going. We'd killed the biggest of all bads in the most epic anime showdown, and the game was just continuing. I was so caught up in the moment that I forgot I was pretty much playing the Persona equivalent of a final mix game. Just comes full fucking circle. The ending of the game was so perfect that once the new content for Royal started, fatigue finally started to settle in. The new story is sprinkled into the main game, and it was to the point where even as someone who never played the original Persona 5, I could recognize it as new content. So through the adventure, I'm waiting for the story to finally pay off. But by the end of the game, I kind of just forgot about it all. Then, in the middle of the ending, the new stuff just immediately picks up. You go back home and the story just continues like you installed some new DLC. So after beating the game and feeling satisfied with the journey I still had another 20 hours to go. And that's fine, it's all good, it's still Persona 5. But like when I tried going back to Odyssey, I started feeling kind of over it. Then after beating the new final boss, the ending just continues like the last 20 hours never happened. You get some new cutscenes, but the overall story just feels forced into here. I know the biggest draw for people were the new party members you could get, but they could only be used for this new portion of the game. Again, I can't speak for the gameplay changes, but if you already own Persona 5 and just want to play the new content, don't buy Royal. But I would say get Royal if you haven't played Persona 5 before, or it's been a long time since you've played Persona 5. This is the superior version of this title, and it has also become one of my new favorite games of all time. It is a real time investment in order to get the most out of it, but while playing it, there was never a moment I was dreading the next part. It just reminded me of being a kid and blindly playing a game I've never heard of, hoping it'd be good. And it truly was an experience I never saw coming. And those were all of the big, massive RPGs I played through 2020. But I do want to know, what were some of the big RPGs you guys ended up playing throughout the year? Please let me know in a comment down below, or join my Discord so that we can get a discussion going. And I do want stuff for my backlog, so please tell me games to play. If you want to see reviews of other games I've done, click that playlist over there. And while I have you here, why not subscribe so you know whenever I post a new video? Thank you guys, and I'll see you next time.